So finally we've made it to dynamic forms. Now in the last two lessons we've looked at reactive forms and we've looked at the three structural directives that we'll need to build dynamic forms. Now I'm going to be honest before we get started here, because I'm going to be brutally honest with this particular subject. I've done this tutorial a number of times, and that's why it's taken me so long to get to this point. And the reason for it is essentially time. Now, originally when I did the tutorial, I wanted to do this register form, this one here in the actual shot. But going through every step I needed to take in order to build this was just, it was too long of a video, way too long of a video. Yes, it was very informative. Yes, it was very interesting, the way that I did it, you know, but it was just too long. And to be honest with you, you know, this is going to be one of the things that, you know, you've got to perfect yourself anyway, right? But basically, what I'm deciding to do instead is I'm going to come into the Teams area. And remember when we selected the Cleveland Cavaliers or one of these, right? And we made the change here, like so. It would automatically go and reflect the change up in the table. And I said that, really, I don't really want that to happen until I click Submit. Now, the reason why this happens at the moment is because we're using ngModel and we're binding this input field to a particular property on the selected team, right? So as soon as this changes, anything that's also bound to that same object is going to be changed. So in this case, it happens to be a row on the table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update this form to be dynamic. Even though technically it's not a dynamic form, it's a very structured form. But just to give you an idea of how you can build up a dynamic form and place it here. Yeah, now this is not a normal example that you would do for a dynamic form. Normally you would pull down the fields and a response to the answers of those fields, or just the fields themselves, and then you'd save it as an object to something and store it away in some kind of result. But I'm not going to get too deep in that. Literally all I'm going to show is how to build a dynamic form and how to populate one and how to save it back to the model post clicking the submit button, and have that automatically reflect, and then obviously have this section disappear. That's what I'm going to do for this particular topic, because it's the shortest way I could think to do this without getting into too much detail, because this is a subject that can take a very long time to show. So, you know, this is the most simplest way possible that I could think to do, other than the example that's actually on the Angular site, which is a question-based one. So if you guys want more information, just go up to Angular. In fact, it's angular.io, and then I believe under Docs, under Advanced, about half or near the bottom, I believe. It's under Advanced? Maybe it's not under Advanced. Dynamic. No, maybe it's under a tutorial. No, Cookbook. It's under Cookbook, sorry. So in the Cookbook, there's a dynamics form section which explains a different way to do it. It's also very accurate and very good, and it's probably showing you the true way to do it in terms of building a new questionnaire type screen. But at the end of the day, you still have a question object that you need to populate. Anyway, I don't want to read too much into this. I wanted to do my own version that was relative to what I was working on. So, but if you want to know more about dynamic forms, go to the Angular site, go into Cookbook, and then click on dynamic forms. You can read the page here. So, before I actually get started on this though, what I wanted to actually address is something I've had for a while, and I finally worked out what the issue was with this big long yellow piece of string here. Now, inside the Angular library, there's a class called player. Right? So it was warning me, you know, there are multiple modules with names that are only different casing, but there's a player with a lowercase p, right? And so it didn't break as a result of the fact that the casing was different, and the fact I wasn't importing the lowercase version. But this is just a warning. But I want to get rid of this warning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my code. I'm going to go into the shared area. I'm going to go to players. I'm going to rename this file. And what I'm going to rename it to is I'm going to rename it to basketball player, like so. And then in here, I'm going to rename the class to basketball player. Alright, save. Now I'm going to go through the rest of the files that will have that. So we can come here, we go basketball player, and we just copy and paste this in a few places. Like so. Basketball player. Save. I believe that's the REST API has a reference to it, if I remember. Yep. So basketball player. Whoops. Yep, that. And rename that. And rename that. I just really want to get rid of this, and I want you guys to follow along with me to get rid of it as well. If you're following me on my GitHub, which you may or may not be, but if you are, then I'm giving you the answer now. Now, I don't think there's anything else that I had for the lookup was for the form, which we weren't involved with players. Changed those already. Changed the REST API service. The app component didn't have any references to it. Neither did the routing, neither did not found. So what I believe is I come up to the players area, I come to players list, I go the component file, and we have a reference to player here, like so. We save that, and we come in, we change all these to basketball player. Same as this one down here. Save that, and then come down to the profile, and I believe this is all that's left. What I need to do, basketball player, and then change the name here, and change the name there, and I believe that's enough to make this compile and work now. This should have got, this error should now have gone away. So we're going to see a lot of, okay, so what do we got here? This could have been while I was working on it. So let's just make one quick little change. I'm just going to add space here just to confirm that when I do the build, it's all good. And it looks to be all good. We've got no errors. So now if I come over and I click on players, and I click on the name, you can see that still works. And now we don't have that error anymore. So that was just a quick change I wanted to do. That was just getting in the way. But it looks all good now. So that issue, or that warning is now gone. So now let's get started on the form itself, okay? So if people remember, in the previous 2 videos that I've done, the first one is looking at reactive forms. We had this concept of a form group, right? And we had form controls, and we bound them to different controls. That's how reactive forms worked. Well, it's the same thing for a dynamic form. A dynamic form is a reactive form, essentially. It's a reactive form that is created on the fly based on fields that you pass through and the values of those fields from another source, potentially. You know, if you're doing an edit form, which in our case, we're doing an edit form. So we're passing in existing values, and we're also passing in form controls. Now I wanted to do this one because I wanted to show how they map up to each other, because you may not necessarily see how that works if you do a new screen. You know, so if we're to create a new team, and have that added to the table here, you've only seen half the interesting part. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create a shared folder, sorry, not a shared folder, a forms folder inside of the shared library. So where am I right now? Okay, so we're not under app. So we go cd shared, and we can see lookup players team. So I'm going to make a new directory, and I'm going to call it forms. And then I'm going to cd inside of forms, and I'm going to make another directory, and I call it fields. You might say, why are we doing this? What do I need this for? Well, I'm going to be creating two things inside of the field section. One's going to be a component, and the other one's going to be a service. Alright? And there's going to be some few other things around the side of that, that will be used. So, first I'm going to go in, and I'm going to create the service, which I'm just going to call forms field service. So we go ng g service, and I'm calling it form-fields, like so. And it takes a bit to execute that. In fact, I'm only going to be creating the service, not the actual component. The component I'm going to leave inside of the edit part. Now, it says here, service is generated but not provided, so I'm going to quickly just jump over and make sure it is provided. So we're going to jump into, because we're under shared, so I come down to shared module, and I'm going to create a import for the new service, which I've just called forms field service. Just quickly check the form. I think I just called it form field service. And for whatever reason, it hasn't shown up inside of this folder. Oh, I have created this in the wrong place, I believe. I've put it here, which is not right. So I'm just going to quickly grab these, because they're not in the right folder. Ah, come on, man. Just drag them up into shared fields. And the other one, always be aware of what directory you're in before you do stuff. So now I can come into the module, shared module, and form field service from /forms/fields, and we just went form field. Yeah, that one, form fields.service. That's the one we want. And it looks like it has been called form field service. No, form fields service. There it is. I'll like that on the end here. Now the other thing I'm going to do while I'm in here, because actually no, not in this particular module. It's in the different module. Actually, don't worry about what I was about to say, because it's not correct. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come out to the REST API. The service, the form field service, and we have a constructor. Now, to be honest with you, I don't believe I need the constructor for this particular example. I just need to provide a function that we will use, and I'm going to call it, so I'm going to get rid of this very quickly, get fields for form. Now, I try to think of this as it would eventually come from a database. So normally you pass in form ID or something, maybe something like that. Or sorry, form ID number. But for this case, I'm not passing any parameters because I'm not getting anything from the database yet. And what I'm going to return is I'm going to return something called a form field, and it's going to be a generic type of any, and I'll explain more of that in a minute. And then I'm just going to end that. So that's what this service is going to return. So what is this form field? What this form field is going to be is it's going to be essentially a base generic class for all the fields that I wish to load in a form. Now, the any part stands for what kind of value, what's the type of value we're going to have for the form. All right. And so for most forms, that might be for a text box, that's probably going to be string. For a number field, it might be a number. And that's what it really comes down to. Now, we don't really need this for this example because I'm going to keep this quite plain and simple. we won't be passing in values from our fields by default. We'll be passing in the value from a model instead. So it's not going to matter the type. The only thing that matters is what type do we render. Okay. So now I'm going to come over, and because this is just a class, I'm going to come over. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it form-field, like so, .ts. Right. Export class form field. Right. So straightforward stuff. And basically, what I need for this particular example is I'm going to have something called a key. Now, you'll find out more what the key is when I actually get to building the HTML. But essentially, it's going to be the name of the fields and a couple of other attributes. And then I'm also going to have a field type. And this is going to be of a type, field type. There you go. Whoa, another object I have to define. Yeah, well, it gets a little bit that way. So that's basically the two fields I want. I'm going to provide a constructor for this though. So I'm going to go constructor. I'm going to pass in the key of type string and also the field type again of type field type. Right. And we'll go this dot key equals key. This dot field type equals field type. Right. So that's all pretty standard stuff. And there's nothing else more important there to say. But this is really like a base class. We're not actually providing much here at this point. Plus, there could be more information about another field, like a text field has a placeholder, for example. You may want to specify a placeholder for, a text field or an input field of some sort. And a select box doesn't have a placeholder. So that would go in an inherited class. So that's essentially we're going to be doing that. But before I do that, I'm going to create this field type. So we'll come down again and we'll create a field type.ts file. And we're going to export, and it's going to be an enum field type. Oops, capital T, like so. And we're going to have just for this example, I'm not going to have too many examples. In fact, I'm just going to have at this stage probably just the one. So text equals 0. I could have select, I could have radio button, but for the example, if you go back and look at the UI we've got, so if I click on here, we've got just text boxes, right? Now, later on, maybe after I've taught more about Angular 2, I might come back and do a more complicated form with more dynamic data in it. Again, this is just because it would have taken too much time to go through it all. But this is essentially, it's the same kind of model. So you'd have a field type. Here you'd have text, you'd have radio button, you'd have text area, select, statement, whatever it is, right? Whatever field type you're referring to. Text to me, actually this should be text box, sorry. I'll make it text box because text box can be number, email, phone, all those different kinds. It's input text. In fact, I might even call it input. Right? I'll call it input because input makes the most sense. Right? It's got a value of 0. Now, this is all fine. I could just pass in that for now, but what I'm going to do is I want to be a little bit more complicated with my markup. So we know for a fact that all our fields are text fields. So text field is a type of form field, but it also provides more than what the form field I've already specified has, right? And just to be safe, I need to come up here. I almost forgot this. Import field type from field type. Right, so that's all happy. So now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another field or another field that's a different type. So I'm going to call it, we call it input field, like so. And go TS. And I'm going to export class input field. Right. It's going to extend. So extend is like inheriting, extends form field, like so. And I just need to import that. import. Again, I do all this manually so people know that you gotta basically remember this stuff off the top of your head. Like once you know it all, it's fine to do the IntelliSense form field. And once again, you know, something like a text field might be in a different library or a different folder or whatever, but for me, I'm just keeping everything in the same folder for now because it's just easy to work with. Now I've got a constructor here, right? And what I want to actually provide to this on top of what's in the form field is I want to provide a placeholder, which is a type string. I want to have another type field, so this would be a input type. So this would be another enum input type. And you're probably asking what input type is. Well, I'll get to it in a minute. So now we've got the constructor, we've got a key as before, we've got the input type, input type of type input type, and we've got a placeholder text, so we'll just go placeholder. Now I think for now, oh hang on, no, what I also want and should have provided, oh no, I'll leave it, no. First I'll define this as a string, but I think what we also need is we need to provide a label. So label string, like so. And this label I'm going to store as part of the form field because it's not actually to do with an input, it's to do with the presentation of any form field. So in here I'm going to put in a field for that. So we've got label, and we'll make it string. And down here, I'll put it as the second one. Label string. And in fact, I should not put that under there. Let's keep everything in order. Oh god, I hate it when that happens. And then we'll go this dot label equals label, right? So we've got the three main things I think that are important. Now for this video, I'm not going to be doing validation, but you know, if you've followed the other two videos, you can probably practice yourself on how validation can be applied. But for now, I would say the validation property would be stored here in the form field class, just to give you a hint. But for now, I'm not going to focus too much on that. So now we'll come in, and if you want to ever call the constructor of a base class, you just press super in TypeScript. And I'll pass in the key, the label, and a field type, which is field type dot input. Whoops, like so. And I just realized I pushed the field. That gave me the input, the field type for me, which is good. And then we go this dot input type equals input type, and this dot placeholder equals placeholder, like so. So at the moment we're just writing the glue code for building dynamic fields. We've seen some of this already, you know, but not written in this manner because it's going to be very much different once we see the end result. So I put in all that. Just need to specify this input type enum now. So I'm going to come over here, input type .ts. Now this is going to have more than one value because we're looking at export enum input type. So for this example, we've got text and we've got number. So I'm going to put text equals 0, and I'm going to put and number equals 1, right? And we'll come back to the text field. Where did I put it? Oh, sorry, input. The input field. Keep calling it text field. It's not. It's an input field. We're just going to import in the input type. Whoops. Got caps lock stuff on there. Input type from input type, like so. And for the moment, and there could be some changes to this, but I think that's what I'm happy with. Now I'm going to come over to the service, because what I'm going to do very quickly is I'm going to mock up a service that will just mock out some data that can be sent out to a component. So we've got this form field. This should be a form field array, like so. Now I haven't actually passed that in yet, so we're going to import form field from, it's in the same folder, so form field, like so. And at the same time, we're going to need a few other things, so we're going to go text field, not text field, input field. I keep calling it bloody text field. That's only because I've seen it in a different example. That's why I keep doing it. Input field. We're going to need import. Was it input type from / input type. Now, is there anything else I'm going to need from this? I don't think so. So what I'm going to do now is I need to create the 3 field types, or the 3 fields for this form. So the first one's a team name, and it has a string called, it's going to be a string, it's in a text field, and that's it. For the second one, it's a number field, it's number of wins, and this is also a number field, number of losses. So we need to create those 3 fields here and pass them in, and return them in an array. So I'm going to go let's team name field equals new input field. We're going to pass in. Now this is the very important part here. The name that's in here that I'm about to type has to match, for this example to work, because I'm going to be editing content. It's going to have to match the name of the team property name. So in this case, team name is team, in lowercase, and then name in uppercase, and number of wins and number of losses, right? So you're going to have to match head to head. Now you'll see why when I build the form, why that's the case, but just for now, I'll take it in for what it's worth. So we've got input field, and then the label is going to be team name, and then the input type is input type dot text, and placeholder is going to be enter team name, something like that. Alright, and we'll do that for the other 2. So we got number of wins field, not wins field, equals new input field, and it's number of wins. And what's the UI currently say? It just says wins. And we've got input type, dot number, because this is a number. And then for the placeholder, what does it currently say? If I remove the wins, it says enter number of wins. So we're going to enter number of wins. Is it got a full stop? Nope. Okay, so that's that one. And the second one will be very similar. It's also going to be an input field that's number, except it's just going to be losses. So number of losses. And again, I think that says losses. Yep. So I hope you guys can follow along with what I'm doing so far. It shouldn't be too hard at this stage. Now we need to return an array of these things, so we're going to go team name field, followed by the number of wins field, followed by the number of losses field. Right? And that's it for the service. And we have passed, or we're going to pass through all the fields we need in order to process the edit form. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually close down all these individual tabs because there's so many of them and they just get in the way. Right, just quickly check the Angular CLI to confirm we've got no errors. Now there's been a few errors here, though however that could be from a previous build, but let's take a look. So once again, I'm going to come down. For now, I'm going to come into the Teams area. We're going to start off with Teams list. Is there anything I need to change in Teams list? I don't believe I have to do anything in Teams list. Let's have a look at the markup. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's left as is. So we'll come to Team Edit because this is the main thing we'll be changing. And I'm just going to quickly add add a space here and save. And I just want to quickly see if I still get those red errors. It doesn't look like it. So it looks like it's all good now. So if I come over here and click, everything still responds because we haven't glued anything up yet. So everything should work as it did before. So if I type in 2, you'll see it automatically reflects up here still. So we haven't actually glued anything up yet. So this is where it gets interesting. Okay, from this point onwards, this is where we get to this component and we start to make critical changes to make this thing dynamic, right? But the first thing we need to do is we need to come to the Teams module, and we were originally importing the Forms module because we were just using a view model, right? But now we need to import, like the other reactive example, we need to do a reactive forms module. Now you're probably asking why. You know, once again, if you remember the forms group attribute and the forms control attribute and the bindings that were, or the attribute bindings that were specified there, they're all part of the reactive forms module. So we need to import the reactive forms module in order to use that. So that's the first change we need to make before anything else. Well, it's not the first change we need to make, but it's the first change I make in order to ensure that this is going to work. Okay. So, what do we do next, right? So, what we're going to do is we need to create a form group, right? And we need to add controls to it. That's exactly what we need to do. So, and then we also need to pull down the form fields, right? So at the moment, we're just picking the selected team. Now we still need that, okay? But we're not going to be binding to it anymore using ng model. So underneath this, we're going to create a couple more fields, and the first one's going to be called form fields, and this is going to represent the form fields array, like so. So back up here, I need to import in the form field from dot slash, whoops, why is it doing that? Stop doing that. It's picking it up in IntelliSense and apply. Alright, so it's after one dot, escape that. Shared, not teams, we're going forms, fields, and form field, like so. So now we can see that we've got form fields. The other thing we need to get access to up here is import. We're going to grab the form group and form control. Or do I not need form control? I can't remember now. I don't believe I do. I do need form control. Just trying to remember. Yes, I do need it. From Angular /forms. Right. So underneath the other variable we just created, we're going to create a form group, and I'm going to call this team edit form, and this is a form group. So at this stage there's nothing that's been set on it at all. And what we also want to do is, because we want to go get those form fields, we need to import the form field service. That's the other thing I forgot to do. So we'll pretty much just grab the top one here, because services in the same. So form fields. Yes, I get it. Form fields service and form fields dot service, like so. And then down here we're going to create a constructor. So constructor, and we're going to pass in that form fields service, which is a type of form fields service, like so. And do nothing else there, just close that off. Now I'm going to show you a new lifecycle method for Angular 2 components, and I'm probably going to cover more on these lifecycle methods in the next video and tie off Angular 2 components completely, and then before we move on to directives. But the new lifecycle I'm going to be specifying here is called onChanges. And basically, this method is, or this function will be called whenever there's a change to the model that's being passed in here. So you see the selected team, right? Whenever this is changed, whether it be changed by the saved team or it's changed by clicking on the different table entry, I want the edit form to change, right? Now, a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, well, I should be able to change the row that I select while I'm trying to edit the form." I get that, and you can fix that yourself in another time. But for simplicity, I'm just going to put everything inside this ng onChanges. So it goes like this. So it's got ng onChanges, like so, and that's it. Now, we know for a fact that when we first load the Teams page, that we have not clicked on any rows, right? So at this point, selected team is null, right? We can't do anything with it. We can't display anything because we don't have anything to edit. Okay, so at this point, we don't want to do any creation of dynamic form data or anything like that, because we simply do not have the values that we need in order to populate the form. So the first check we're going to have here is if this dot selected team. In other words, if this has a value, we can do something, right? Otherwise, right, and we have to do this. This is part of how you build up an ng form. Else, we're going to go this dot team edit form equals new form group, and I'm going to pass in nothing there, right? So you want to say, oh, why am I doing this? It's just to satisfy the fact that the form that we're going to have in the markup is going to expect a form group element, whether it has anything at all or nothing. It doesn't matter. It needs an object. So that's what I'm giving it. So whenever there's no team, we want to give it the object anyway, right? Even if nothing happens. So that's what I'm doing there. So the next thing we want to do, if we do have an element, is we want to go and get the fields, right? And we see up here we've got form fields, and we've got the service. So let's go and get the form fields. So we go this dot form fields is equal to this dot form field service. Form field service. In fact, I forgot to put private in front of the constructor here, which is why it's not coming up. Form field service, there it is. Dot get fields for form, right? And again, we're not passing any parameters. So we've got an array or null or nothing. We don't know at this stage, right? So what I'm going to do is go if, right? If this dot form fields, so in other words, it didn't return null, right? So it returned at least an empty array. I probably should say also, and this dot form fields dot length is greater than 0, right? Then we can do something, right? Now we have to keep in mind that normally for the data that you get back from this, it should match the same fields that are specified in the selected team. So this would be, go and get us the fields that allocates to a type of team, and that would be it, right? So you would say, go and get the fields for a team, and then that would go and pull down the fields from some database somewhere that says, okay, we know a team has a team name, we know it has a number of wins and a number of losses, and that would be what would be returned from this function, right? Just wanted to quickly clarify that so that you can see how the distinction matches up. So what's in here, the field names in here should match pretty much the properties that are in this team. You know, that's kind of how it matches up. Otherwise, you're going to have very complicated logic, and this is supposed to be dynamic. So anyway, moving on. So if we have anything, we're going to iterate over it. So we go, first we're going to create a bunch of control or a control object. And this is to satisfy the form group below. So this will contain an object that specifies the type of controls that are going to be in the form group, and it's specified as an object because that's what the form group expects. So first I had to write that, and then we go this dot form fields dot for each, right, field like so. So this is, if you've ever done C#, that's similar to a lambda expression. And so for in here, what we're going to do is we're going to go controls, right? We're going to field dot key. Now you're saying, what is this key again? Remember I said it had to be a similar name to the property of the team. Well, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to be iterating over these form fields, creating inputs with the right names that will match to in the end it will match to the model, the selected team model, so we can quickly save it back. Anyway, you'll understand more when I get to the save part, but right now just know that we're creating a bunch of controls, and the name of the control is going to be essentially this field.key value. So for team name, it was lowercase t, uppercase n for name, and then for the other ones it was different once again. But I'm going to set this to a new form control. Right, and what a form control wants is it just wants, at this case, the value of what's coming in from the selected team. All right, so we go this dot selected team, and we go field dot key. Right. Now this is where I said that the name of the field dot key had to match the same name as the property in the selected team or the team object. The reason being is that if you know JavaScript, you can access your properties in a number of different ways, and you can either call them directly, like by going .team name, like so, right? Or you can do it via like a associative array, right, where you pass in a string, and it will also access that member. Right? So in this case, because we've got team name as the key of the first field, we're accessing the team name property value from the selected team. So what's going to actually go on this control is the value of, if I choose Cleveland Cavaliers, well, this dot selected team of field dot key, which happens to be team name, will populate Cleveland Cavaliers, and we'll put the value in this form control. Does that make sense? If that doesn't make sense, let me know in the comments and I'll explain more. But for now, that's what I'm going to leave it at because I don't want to spend too long on this. So that's all we need to do to populate the controls for the form group. And then finally, down here, we're going to go this dot team edit form equals new form group. And instead of passing in an empty object this time, because we do have form fields, we're going to pass in the controls object. So we've got controls, and that's it, right? Now the other scenario we have to cover is if we don't have any form fields, then potentially we shouldn't be doing anything. So therefore, to satisfy the conditions, once again we have to go this dot team edit form equals new form group empty, and potentially we have to also go this dot selected team, because if we don't choose this, what's going to happen is it's going to try and process the fields on the form, and we want to only process fields on the form when there's a selected team, and we can get the fields for the form. So I'm going to set this to null at this time, right? Because we can't do anything with it. In fact, I'm not 100% sure about this change. I'm going to verify this later, so I might leave that out for the moment, just because I want it to work when I first try it. So every time, basically, whenever we make a change, we click on a new record, or we update the value of the selected team, this is going to be reapplied. In fact, no, not when we change it in the form. When we change it in the form, we're not modifying the selected team property yet. We're modifying the values within the form group. Okay? So the form group is a separate object, so therefore, as a result, the selected team is not affected until we save the data later. Now, I believe that's all I need for the moment for the component. So what we need to do now is we need to focus on the form. Now, this is where the previous tutorial, when I spoke about structural directives, this is where this kicks in. So if we come over to the team edit component HTML file now, we had all these things hard-coded, right? So we had team name, number of wins, number of losses, right? Now we can do this differently. We can come in here, and we're not going to have all these fields anymore. We're just going to have the one, right? So you got the one up here. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing I need to do is I need to keep the ngIf on selected team. So you remember ngIf. So this form will only populate itself when we have a selected team. So when we first load the page, this is null. So as a result, this component details underneath is never actually loaded, right? It's basically destroyed, and then initialized and destroyed, then initialized and destroyed, and so on and so forth, right? So we're going to keep this here because this protects us from whenever we first load the page, we don't try and do anything else in here. Which, if we try to do anything else, the form would break, okay? Because we don't have a selected team yet in order to get the right fields and stuff and match it up the right way. So we're going to leave this first line, except the thing we're going to change here, and again, if you remember the reactive form stuff, we have to change this to a form group, like so, right? And I believe I called it edit team or something like that, team edit form. So we have to make sure these things are the same, like so. So it's saying use this form group for this particular form, right? So we could specify more than one form group in this component, and this form could be one component, and then maybe we create another form down here with a different form group, and that would be a different part of the component. But they can have the two forms in one component. That's how you can break up forms, right? Using different form groups. Anyway, that's going off sidetrack. So the next thing we want to look at, we'll keep the heading, and we want to keep this div class equals form group. However, we can see that that's applied across every single field, and we can see there's a label that's also applied across every single field. So the one thing we want to do now is that we really need to use, and if you remember, that we want to iterate over a number of different fields now, right? Because we've got a field collection. So we've got an ng4 here. So already, you can see from the previous video, we've used the ngIf, and we're going to now create an ng4. So we go let field in, I believe I called it fields. Did I call it fields? Form fields. Right. So already we've used ng4 and ngIf. Now you're about to see ng switch very shortly too. So we come in here, we've got the field. So the first thing we want to do is we want to update the label for the for, and we want to update it to field.key, right? And you'll see in a minute why we're using field.key, but essentially we're going to be binding ID and name in the next line down here. In fact, I'm going to do it right now, so you can understand straight away. These things here will now become field.key. Field.key. So that allows us to have a unique name and a unique ID for this particular field. ng model now goes away. Alright, so we don't use ng model anymore because we're not going to be binding to a model. And in its place, we put in the name form control name. Now again, that's from reactive forms. So now we're naming the control, which will also be, because of the fact that we name the controls with the key of the fields, will also be the name of the key for the field. So nothing different there. So far we've got input type is text. Now the other thing we have to put in here is we need to put the label. So we're going to go field.label, like so. I believe I had that all lowercase. This is probably going to break first go. That's just the truth of the matter. Now we also had placeholder. So now we put in here field.placeholder. Now you might say, oh, but that was on the text component. Well, I'm about to show you how that works in a minute. So even here, we can go I think I said text type, I believe. No, actually, just leave this for the minute. I'm going to leave it at text. Or I was going to call it, how was I going to do this again? I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head. Field.text type name. I believe I was going to do it like that. So I was going to avoid the ng switch here, which if I hadn't done it the way I'm doing it now, you would have had to use an ng switch. So I'm just wondering, do I really want to go this way or do I want to go with the ng switch? I'll do it this way for now, and if I don't feel like it's too long, I'll change it to ng switch. But you all know how to use an ng switch anyway, so probably I won't worry about it. So again, I want to bind the type. So type here to that. Now I think that's everything I need. So what's this text type name, right? Well, the other thing I haven't done yet, and I need to do this right now. In fact, do I have to? Yes, I do. Because, no, technically I don't, because I've only got the one type. But I'm going to do it anyway. So, what you normally do is if you're going to have more than just an input control, which for this example I don't have, but I'm just going to do this just to be funny. So you apply here an ng switch, which you've all seen before, and I've spelt it wrong again, equals field.field type. So remember with that field type that we created, and at the moment it just had the one. So we do a switch on that, and I'm going to put underneath this control, I'm going to put a div, just to break it out. Oops, div. Now I've got input type. Now here you would also go, remember the star? Remember how we had the template star symbol and we had the ng switch case? In fact, I'm just going to quickly grab, it's not here, ng switch, I've spelled it wrong again, case equals, now for the field type for text it was just 0. So that means that this should be a text, like so. And then I've gone text name. Now, if I didn't apply this, right, this text type name, which I'm about to write for the text field, I would have to do another switch, right? Because you'd have to switch on the field type, and if it was the type input, whatever it is, then I'm going to call this input type name, like so. But if I didn't have this, I would have to do another switch to determine what type of input it is, and then under this div I'd need another, or I'd need more switches. There'd be just a bunch of, there'd be too many switches, right? But for this example I just want to have very simple, so I've just gone with the one field type and the one switch, and this input type name will remove the fact that I don't need another switch. another switch case for every single type of input. And I believe that's all I need to do for this particular HTML. So I'm going to save. Now this isn't going to work yet because I haven't implemented this. And in fact, we'll see if it throws a break. It doesn't throw a break, but as soon as I click here, it's not going to do anything. Right? And if I look, it's probably going to say, I don't understand what that input. Sorry, my bad. I always do this. Let field, it's of form fields. Now this is just me being a C# developer, and I remember always used to use let, even though there's no real let. Well, there is a let in C#, but it's not really recommended to use it. But there's always a something in C#, so I always get it mixed up. It's a common mistake I make in Angular, and so now it does load up. But then I click this. Oh, it actually does come up with some of the information. Now I've got an error. Probably because I've got one extra brace here that I don't need. So strangely enough, for the most part, that's worked. If I click here, what I think will happen though is that the type will be wrong. So if I come down here, it might default to text. It says type is undefined. So that's the bit I need to fill in now, so that I can get the right, because this is probably not a number field and it needs to be a number field. Yeah, undefined. So I think the default for this browser is text. So let's go and fix that quickly. So we go back up to shared, come down to the input type, not input type, input field, and we're going to create that getter. I'm going to call it a getter. Input type name. Now we've passed an input type string, so what we really need to do is we need to return a string based on the input type. So because we only got two in this case, I'm just going to do a simple switch. Normally I don't do switches. I'd probably register a dictionary of values and then I'd use an index on that, or a key on that, but for this example I'm just going to go switch input type. What's it say here? Cannot find. Oh, sorry. This dot input type, and we'll go. I think it's case input type dot text. Return text. Case input type dot number. Return number. And then case is the default. Yeah. No, maybe not. Anyway, I'll just leave the default out for now. Save that. And now we should get the right type. If I click on one of these, I come down, you can see that the values are now populated, because if you go back to the form control, where did we actually set the value? We set it based on the key of the field, and the key, the name of the key happened to be the same name as the property that was on the team object, so that's why it matches up nicely. Right, and same with the wins and same with the losses. Now I just want to quickly check the type of these fields. This should be a number now, and type, where is it? Type equals number. That's good. And for this one, it should also be type equals number. Type is number. It's good. And for the top one, we get type equals text. That's good. And we're getting someone pounding, but I don't know what they're bashing about. But here's the other thing too. So if I go in and I change this now, have you noticed above, nothing is being changed? If I click submit, well, nothing's being changed yet either, right? It just goes away. And if we come back and we click on something, then we click on it, it goes away, and so on and so forth, right? But we're not actually changing anything. So now we need to do the saving part. right? We've done the dynamic form. We've created the form. It looks nice. It's got the default value, or it's got the values for the teams in it, which is all good. Now, I'm not going to do validation. I mean, you guys, once again, can handle that in your own time. I want to keep this as short as I could, which is not really that short. Never mind. And so the last thing I want to do is I want to save the data. So how do I do that? Well, we see down here, we've got this dot selected team equals null. Now that was just from the old version, and we're still going to keep that line there because that will ensure that the form closes. Right? So we're going to keep that. Now, what do we need to do in order to get the data back into this selected team? Right? Well, the one way that people always do it, and they spend hours trying to work out what's wrong, and I'll explain to you why it actually breaks when I get to it. But the first thing they try and do is they go, this dot selected team, right? Because all the values are the same, right? You can actually get the value straight from the form. So you can do this dot team edit form, right? Dot value, right? Now, I'm going to comment this out for a minute, and I'm going to make it look like you sit there and go, well, actually it makes sense, but it really doesn't. So if I log each one of these, so if I go this dot selected team, right, and then I go console.log this dot, what was the name? Team edit form dot value, right? And I'm going to also, we're going to go JSON dot stringify it because I want to show you the JSON of these two objects. Because once you see it, you're gonna wonder why that line there below that I just commented out doesn't work. You'd be like, but that doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Well, first I'll show you that they're equal. So let's come back to the code. I'll reopen the developer toolbar. We'll come over to the console, and so I'll come in. I'll click on Cleveland. I'll come down. I'll change something. So I'll go 13. I'll submit. And you might say, all right, this one has winning percentage and games behind, right? And I didn't realize that it was going to have that extra data, but it does have team name, it does have number of wins, it does have number of losses. So the first thing, or the first issue would be that if we tried to assign this here to this here, you would lose the winning percentage and the games behind. But that's actually not the issue of why it doesn't work, because you watch what happens when I try to do it, right? So you can see here that the values have changed, except for, and so, but you can see that the main properties, team name, number of wins, number of losses, normally when you combine two objects together or you point one object to a new object, because they have the same property names, that should map to the right, interpolation values up here for each of the columns. Yeah, that's normally how Angular works, right? You bind to the properties. So if the property names don't change, then why does it not apply? Well, I'm gonna run it just to show you that it doesn't work. So save and let it run. So I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna click on Cleveland. I'm gonna change this to 13. I'm gonna submit. And it goes away, and you can see nothing has changed. You're like, but I just changed the selected team, right? I've changed it. It's now equal to the value. In fact, just because this might be what people are asking, oh, that's breaking it, I'll take that out even, right? So I'll refresh. I'll do this one more time, because I didn't see that null check, the null assignment at the bottom, because it'd be like, that's why it doesn't change. So now I've set the 13, right? I've now taken that form data, I've assigned it to the selected value, but if you see, nothing up here changes. Now you're like, why doesn't it change? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, and it's actually a JavaScript thing. It's not an Angular thing, it's a JavaScript thing. So think about what this is doing, right? This .teamEditForm.value, right? This is a form group object, right? This is a form group object that has a value property on it that happens to return a value of any, right? So it's any object. This is a team, right? This is expecting a team. This is an any object. Now, even that's not a concern at this point. You could have this any that represents a different, represents the exact replica of a team, right? And it still wouldn't work. Now, why doesn't it work? Well, think of, memory in a computer. This here is one memory location, right? Which happens to point to the table, the reference table thing, the table entry that you clicked on, right? That's one object reference. This is a separate reference, right? This is pointing to the value property of this form group. So this is another reference, right? So when I assign the value to this, you're not setting a new team, you're changing the reference of selected team. And the reason why you can get away with it is because this is an any, right? So you can assign an any to any strict type in TypeScript. So it allows this, and you go, oh, geez, it's not actually assigning anything, is it? I've done all this work. I've got an object that spits out the exact same, like JSON minus a couple of fields. I assign it back to the team thinking that should work, but it doesn't. Well, it's just an object reference thing. Angular has got a reference to the selected team. You're changing that reference, so this now is no longer connected to this table reference up here, right? This always stays the same. I hope that makes sense. So what do you do about it though? How do I now get the value from in here and I put it into here, right? Well, the answer is that you kind of have to do it an interesting way. So there's two ways to do it. One is not so great, and that the not so great way is to go this dot selected team dot team name equals this dot team edit form dot value, right? Dot team name, and that will work. So if I go and apply this now, and in fact I'm going to put this back in. If I go and apply this now, you'll see the team name actually changes, but nothing else changes. So let that come through, refresh. So I click on Cleveland again, and if I change this to Cleveland Global is 2, and I click submit, okay, that should have changed, and it didn't. Why did that not change? Interesting. That should have worked. This dot selected team dot team name equals this dot select team edit form dot value. Interesting. I'm just going to take this out again. Just interested to see. Oh wait, I didn't get rid of that top line. That's why. See, running this in real life, in real time, that's why things break. So now it shouldn't be pointing to a new object. So now this dot selected team is still pointing to the team object in the row, and I'm changing the value of team name, so it's doing like a binding. So now if I come in and edit this, I'm going to change it to 2. And you see it hasn't changed here yet. I click, now it has, right? If I come in and edit it again, there's a bug there. If I change this to 11, right, because I haven't assigned it, it won't change up here, right? So the other way is to add them all manually, but that's not very dynamic. So the other way you can do it is you can go, and I've got to remember the syntax, so I'll just leave that there for the minute. So you go for property, for var property in this dot team edit form dot value. So this should go and get each property name. In fact, I should call it property name, right? So we're going through all the property names of this object, and we can come in and we can go this dot selected team dot property name. So again, using that index notation, or that key, or that associated array notation, and then we go this dot team edit form dot value, and then again property name, right? And this should work as well. Now I'm just going to comment this out and save, and now this should populate every field regardless of what you choose. So if I come in, and I'll just refresh this again because I'm not too sure whether that actually works. So if I come into Cleveland now, and I'll change this to 2, and I'll change this to 14, and I'll change this to 5, and save. Now you can see up here, everything has changed. Obviously the percentage doesn't change, but that's because the limitation of the object. Maybe later, or probably in a future video, I'll create this as a calculative property rather than just being one that you type in. But you can see now that the 3 values that I put down there have changed. So if I now come in again, I can undo Cleveland Cavaliers and go submit, and it reflects up there. But once again, oh jeez, I need to fix that bug. Once again, if I come down here and I make a change and say 3, it doesn't update here until later, and so on and so forth. Anyway guys, that was pretty much it, what I wanted to show for dynamic forms. It's a very complicated subject, and that was the shortest I could get, which I think it's been over an hour now that I've been showing this. So I could be wrong about that. It could be only 40 minutes, I don't know. I'm not keeping track of time. So anyway, thank you everybody for listening. If anyone is stuck on this, I have it in GitHub. It might be a little bit different in GitHub because I didn't do it the same way in GitHub. I don't think I did as much in GitHub, but it still worked. But yeah, if anyone's stuck, please shout out to me, follow me on Twitter, tweet to me, ask me what you think is wrong. I'll do my best to answer. You know, I'm always keeping my eye on Twitter. I'll be keeping my eye on my YouTube as well, and anything else. But this is probably the most complicated topic we've done so far, and it might be the most complicated that we do for the whole series, just because it's something that most people probably aren't going to do. You know, most of the time people have fixed form sizes, but what dynamic forms also gives you is the ability to chop and change fields based on inputs of other fields. So that's kind of why they're there. But you can control forms other ways by having inputs when you check on things. So there's really no need to use dynamic forms unless it's something really, really important, like you're creating a form builder or something like that. And in fact, if you look at some of the class names, they're called form builder. But yep, so that's all I wanted to say, guys. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you probably in the new year. I'm actually going away on holidays after Christmas, so I may not be putting up another video until probably February now in 2017. So I'm sorry about that, guys. We're all entitled to holidays. I've been waiting all year for it. So, yeah, I'm going to enjoy it. So, if I don't see you guys sooner than February, I'll try to put up a video maybe while I'm away if I've got some time. And it's something simple and easy, but for the most part, I won't be around. So, anyway, guys, I'm going to go. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. And Merry Christmas to you all. And a Happy New Year as well. Bye for now.